Hello, 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 and welcome to the 20th episode of the Plug in Play podcast. I am your host, Henry, and this episode, it's going to be packed with impressions. We got the Metaphor Refantazio demo. We got the Plucky Squire. We got a handful of other little gems in there. And for news, we got the Sony State of Play. And what's Ubisoft up to this time? Nothing good, per usual. It's going to be fun. Stick around. We're going to have a great time. Before you do that, though, or while you're doing that, while you're doing that, why don't you give us a rating on Apple iTunes, Spotify, leave us a comment, leave us a review. Why don't you send us an email at pluginplaypodcast1@gmail.com, and you can be a part of the show. Send us a question. I'll read it. I'll answer it. I'll talk about it. Whatever you want. It can be about anything. I don't care. I'm a video game guy, but I'll talk about literally anything. I mean, I have a podcast. That's, only people who won't shut up do that. Check out the timestamps in the description if you have something you feel like you'd like to start with first, or just want to, that's all you care about. I don't judge, but we're starting off high energy because you know what? I'm excited about this episode. It's been a minute, not too much longer than normal, but, I just came off of, if you can tell, maybe there's a little congestion in my voice. I just came off of COVID. Normally, I would not have as many impressions to talk about, just a solo guy, but when you are sick with COVID and you can do literally nothing else and just sit on a sofa, you make time for video games, and that's what I did. While I went on a trip and while I was out there, I unfortunately contracted the coronavirus. I thought it didn't exist anymore. That's what I thought was going on, but it clearly still does, unfortunately. I am proof positive, pun intended. But I'm feeling a lot better now, and, still recovering a little bit, but, I'm ready to talk about some video games. I mean, come on. I would have expected this episode to be super heavy into news, because while I've been gone, Tokyo Game Show happened, which, if you don't know what Tokyo Game Show is basically E3 in Japan, or what used to be stereotypically E3 in Japan. So a trade show, kind of, where a lot of video games, kind of get shown off for the first time, or are playable, or something along those lines. And, I went on my vacation, I was expecting to come back and just be, so many, conferences and announcements I'd have to go sifting through, and not really at all, actually. Microsoft had a conference. I am not even going to talk about it on this episode because that's how lackluster it was. I mean, I think they showed off a Metal Gear Solid Delta trailer, and that didn't have a release date because that thing isn't coming out this year. And that was really the only notable thing they had. Kojima, I guess in that vein, also had a Death Stranding 2 presentation. Honestly, I didn't want to watch that. I've seen some highlights from it, but I didn't want to watch that. I'm likely going to play it, and I think it's not even worth paying attention to Hideo Kojima's press, unless you just really want to be confused, because he intentionally just tries to make it make absolutely no sense when he's showing off his new games, which, it is what it is. But I just, one, I don't want anything spoiled for me, and two, I don't get any value out of that necessarily, so I didn't watch that. And then Capcom had a presentation as well, or a presser, and apparently I didn't even watch it, but I know that apparently all they did was just show trailers for games that are already out. And I think then they showed a Monster Hunter trailer, but the light in the darkness was the Sony State of Play for Tokyo Game Show. They showed off some actually interesting stuff. So I'm going to start off with that one. So that's where we'll begin our news for this week, is the Sony State of Play. So I went into this with really low expectations. Pretty much everything I had heard, rumor-wise, press-wise, report-wise, whatever you want to say, was this conference was going to be, or this state of play, conference is a very strong word for state of plays nowadays, but this state of play was going to be, pretty disappointing. Like, they were going to have like a remaster shown that was even less impressive than the Horizon Zero Dawn remake that we already knew was kind of in production, and that was kind of going to be it. And like that, and that was literally kind of how people were bracing themselves for this conference or for presser, especially myself. And I was very, very pleasantly surprised with what was shown off. Let's just dive into it here. They started off the press conference. I will continue to say that, and I apologize with Astrobot DLC. So hot off of the release of Astrobot, they have announced that there will be 10 new levels coming to the game for free. If you have the full game, you get access to them, no problem. And there will be some extra bots, some more references, Stellar Blade bot, Helldiver 2 bots, kind of more recent titles that are being incorporated as these. Hopefully, there's some extras in there as well that we can hopefully be surprised by when we get around to it, or if you get around to it. But they're speedrun levels. I think this is great. Continue on the train of Astrobot is a really great game. I still don't think 95. I think 95 is still a little ridiculous, but I do still think this game is a joy. And Team Asobi has done DLC for Playroom, and they did 2 rounds of DLC years and years apart for that game. Technically, like, they did some speedrunning levels when the game initially released, a little while after that, and then very recently in preparation for Astrobot that just released on the PS5, they added some more DLC to that game, which I said was like the most cryptic DLC. I was not expecting it to be that cryptic. But anyway, free content, I ain't going to say no. And more of such a good game, I'm definitely not going to say no. So I look forward to playing that when I get around to it. Hopefully there's some trophy support in there. There's been trophy support for every other DLC they've released for those games, so I'll look forward to the incentive behind that as well. Then they moved into the Midnight Walk. This was a very interesting one, and I think I have an interesting perspective on it as well, because I've actually played the most recent game from this developer. This is from Moonhood Studios, which, if you're unfamiliar with, they also made Lost in Random. You may know this one specifically from being an EA published title. It is a game about literally like chance. A girl lives in a land of chance, and she must rescue her brother from basically like the king of, or the queen of gambling, kind of, in a way. It was a really interesting concept, and I was even more intrigued by its art style, which is very similar with this one. Midnight Walk seems to be a very claymation-looking game, kind of creepy, Tim Burton-esque, you could say. It's also, surprisingly, a PlayStation VR 2 compatible title. I'll go ahead and say this. The PSVR 2 compatibility didn't look interesting to me. I would just much prefer to play the game what looks to be, non-VR wise. I guess it's really awesome that it's compatible at all with PSVR 2. I just assumed Sony had given up on that device at this point, but here we are. The Midnight Walk, apparently, is one of the big PSVR 2 titles that is compatible with the device. Here's the thing. Lost in Random seemed really cool, had a really cool art style, very similar, kind of Tim Burton vibe. The game was okay. It was pretty meh overall. It never really capitalized on what I thought the vibe of the game could have been. It was, the art style really wasn't super fleshed out either. It was very easy to see the corners that were cut in there. I'm assuming Midnight Walk probably has a lot more of those, edges polished than per se the first game that they made with that kind of art style did. But as somebody who played the last game that they made, I'm genuinely I'm pretty lukewarm on this. I'm genuinely just going to wait for reviews. I don't anticipate this game being fantastic, but it is what it is. It looks interesting, sure. It shows very well, but I genuinely can't imagine this game being some banger. Like, I expect it to be, 70s easy, which is unfortunate, but like, I hate to be the bearer of bad news. Not every game can be frickin' rad. But yeah, I foresee, just with the track record and that and how similar it looks to Lost in Random, probably not that much here. Heck Is Us was up next. Here's the wonderful thing about going over these press conferences now that I don't have two co-hosts, is it was a very interesting dynamic having to deal with, not deal with, that sounds like I was just, the dregs of society were on my podcast, or, well, I guess is it mine? It's mine now. I'm the only one here. But the Cam and Alexis I loved us going through it, but we would often talk about games that I don't think any of us cared about, because we were like, well, we don't want to just gloss over it just in case somebody else has something to say. Like, I didn't want to just completely be like, well, I don't care about this, when like somebody else was like, well, I'm really looking forward, to Metro Awakening VR. Like, we really need to talk about it. So like in this case, I don't care about this game. I don't particularly think much of it. There's not much for me to add to the conversation around it, so I'm just going to say, that's it. That's all I got to say. And I'm going to move on. And that was something that I think will definitely help out in terms of the flow for this, but we'll see. Next up, Metro Awakening VR was shown off just a little bit more. Obviously, from the Metro series, it's a VR title. We've seen this before. It still looks pretty the same. I mean, if you weren't sold on Metro VR, you weren't going to be after this. It's the release trailer of November 7th. So if you have a PlayStation VR 2, all 5 of you will be able to play this game then. So the overlap of Metro fans and PSVR 2 fans, I hope, is strong. But next, Archage Chronicles. So this was one of the new announcements that I just didn't see many people talking about afterwards. It looks interesting. I mean, like, this is another Dark Souls game, or a Souls-like game, but it is heavily based in like a medieval kind of fantasy vibe. And you're like, Henry, is that not what Dark Souls already is? Like, you have dragons, you have your chainmail armor and all that other good stuff, wizards and wardrobes, this is stuff that's already in Dark Souls. Is it not just the same? I'd say this is way more like traditional, like medieval. When you think medieval, you're thinking like, oh, let's go into the pub and all hail the king, like that kind of deal. That's what we're getting with Archage Chronicles. Overall, it looks pretty good. I'm not going to lie. Especially at these state of plays, the Souls-likes have been flowing, like way too many of these things. And at this point, you just got to pick and choose. And I would say this one doesn't look like that good. Like, it's comparative to the ones that we've seen prior and even just other state of plays. I'd say this one still like kind of flies under the radar, and I think that's why I don't see a lot of talk around it, is because of that. So overall, though, I still think it looks like a good game. Is it going to be drowned out by all of these Souls-likes coming out? Like, yeah, is it doing enough to differentiate itself right now from any other Souls-like? Not that I can really see. Like I said, like, Dark Souls is already kind of medieval in that way. So, like, I mean, what are you really offering here to me, And I think, it's not looking good for Archage right now, because it looked like there was a good bit of money put into it, just by the trailer itself. So anyway, unfortunate. Sorry. Moving on, Pal World. Pal World was announced for the PlayStation 5. We knew this was happening. This is, the obvious thing that they were trying to do. Pal World, we've reported on a few times in this podcast. Big 2024 success here. Blew up, and of course they were going to try to put it on every platform they possibly could. This is a series that's trying to be the next Pokemon. It wants to expand its reach as far as humanly possible. And here we are. the PlayStation 5 is the obvious place you want to go. It's one of the biggest platforms for video games out there. I mean, obviously, you're not going to be on Xbox and not be on PS5 when you're trying to have a big reach. It's just the way it is. The funny thing about this is that the game was postponed. It postponed its launch in Japan specifically for the PlayStation 5 because of the ongoing lawsuit with Nintendo, which we talked about in the last episode. So, there are certainly ramifications. It's interesting, though, because I think, I'd have to double check this, but I believe that they have already gone ahead and moved forward with the launch. When they announced it, they were like, we are not coming out in Japan right now. Give us a minute. And it didn't take very long, just took a couple of weeks. And I think that they've just put it out there. So it was a very quick turnaround on that. Honestly, I guess they just kind of they were playing it safe, but good for them. More people get to play Pal World now. If you're still interested, which I know there still are a lot of people out there that are, I just don't ever hear about them anymore, but clearly there still are. So, moving on. Next, we have the Lunar Remastered Collection. This is an interesting one, and it's only because I don't know what the heck Lunar is. I think I think it's just pronounced lunar, like a lunar eclipse. But I think I just hear everybody pronounce it lunar, and that's how I've always said it. But, I guess forgive me. It makes way more sense if you say lunar. But anyway, this is a collection of the first two games. I think the only two? I'd have to honestly do my research on that. But this is the first two games in the Lunar series, and they're being remastered for PlayStation 5. They were both originally on the PlayStation 1. And from what I understand, the real big story behind this, I don't ever hear anybody clamoring like, "Oh, we gotta get Lunar back." Like we all miss Lunar, right? Like I hear way more people clamoring for something like Suikoden, that was a really niche JRPG back on the PlayStation 1 than I do something like Lunar. So like this is definitely a deep cut. What makes it far more interesting to me, I don't care about these games, I'm not going to play this, but what makes it far more interesting to me is the secondhand market for this, is these games were incredibly rare. They're clearly a niche JRPG. If they're bringing them back at all, they clearly had a fan base. So, this game is coming back, but it was super expensive to have a copy of this game because, it was so rare. Nobody bought it. So here we are, a new game, a re-release of these games on modern consoles. Well, what's going to happen to your freaking physical copy is it's going to go down in price because now people don't have to play it on a physical copy. Admittedly, you could probably emulate it pretty easy too, but like I think when those remasters come out, you typically do see a decrease in value of the physical copies as well. But regardless, this is great that there's a legal way of obtaining this game and playing it for, and could open it up to people who I don't honestly see anyone playing this freaking game who's like, oh man, I've heard so much about the Lunar series over the years. Like, I got to try it out for the first time forever now. Like, I think this is definitely like you are a hardcore Lunar fan, you're going to buy this, which admittedly I don't think is a huge demographic in the first place. Clearly they're expecting some new people to come in, but I'd also think this is not a huge job to port to modern consoles, so I would assume the investment porting it was very minimal. It's not a big remake. It's just literally like, well, you can play this on widescreen now. It's like, oh, okay. That's nice, I guess. So anyway, Lunar, congratulations to anybody who wanted to play that game. You can now. Good job. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Shredder's Revenge gets DLC, 2 new characters. I'm not going to lie. I didn't have cable as a kid, so I was never able to watch Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I know it through osmosis. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, obviously every kid knows, but I don't know who the heck these 2 characters are. Cool that it's getting DLC. Free DLC, it looks like, I think. I actually don't know that. I'd have to double check. Free remix of the soundtrack is being released alongside the DLC, so I don't think it is free. I think you do have to pay for these characters, it seems like, and then there's just a remix of the soundtrack that comes along with the release. So I don't know who these characters are, but I do know that Shredder's Revenge is actually a pretty solid freaking game. I really enjoyed it. I played it on Game Pass, and this is just more of an excuse for people to go back and who really like the game and try it again. It's a side-scrolling beat 'em up, and side-scrolling beat 'em ups are great to play through once, and then that's like it. And the only other reason you would go back and play through them again is to play with a different character. And honestly, Shredder's Revenge, those characters are so well done that playing through them as a different character is like honestly a pretty different experience, which is what you want. So it's honestly a pretty decent incentive for anybody who's a really big fan of that game, and I think that there are a decent number of people who are a fan of that game. So that's a nice little announcement for them. Next we had Sonic X Shadow Generations DLC was announced. This is notable. One, I'm looking forward to the game. I love I love Sonic Generations. It is, I'd probably say my favorite Sonic game. I'd probably say it's my favorite Sonic game, yeah. And that like trumps me having nostalgia for like Sonic Adventure, which was like my first game I ever had as a kid. And I played the absolute crap out of it. So like Sonic Generations, really glad to see it come back. Really wish it was a full-on sequel, but you take what you can get. This DLC is interesting because it is Shadow. It is an alternate skin for Shadow, which is the same skin as the movie Sonic 3, which will be coming out in theaters this year. And the big mic drop moment was it is voiced by Keanu Reeves. So they got Keanu Reeves to do voice work for, a Sonic video game, which I think is like kind of crazy. Like, I don't think anybody really respects the video games that much. I think they respect the IP. I think the IP has a lot of command in terms of like Sonic is a very recognizable like character, and clearly the movies do very well. And like kids love Sonic a lot, but I don't think anybody looks at those games and is like, well, yeah, Keanu Reeves is definitely worthy of being in a Sonic game. Like nobody says that. So it's a really weird get for them. And that's cool. I'll say that it is a part of the digital deluxe version. So you have to pay for like the most expensive version of this game in order to get access to that DLC. I will not be doing that. I am totally content with the base game, and this is not like DLC that is tipping me over the scale to be like, yeah, I'll pay an extra 40 or whatever bucks. Like, I honestly don't know how much the digital deluxe version is, but I know that a lot of times those can get pretty pricey, and like what comes along with it is like an extra 3 days you get access to the game before release. I'm like, I just don't care about that kind of stuff. So this is nice. It's also an extra level from what I understand, but like I would assume at some point this gets released for free or maybe a paid DLC. But it's very rare for this kind of content to just sit behind a paywall that's only to encourage pre-orders, and then they just never do anything with it again. Normally this content gets released for free or, just to make an extra quick $5 or something somewhere down the line. So if I'm really that interested in it, I'll pay the premium then, or I will just wait for them to release it then. So we will see. Next up, we got another look at Fantasian Neo Dimension. This is another JRPG, or this is the JRPG that was on iOS exclusively and is getting ported over to consoles. I think it has a very interesting art style. Not super interested in it. I got enough JRPGs to play, and this is not at the top of my list. So moving on. Dragon Age the Veilguard. Now, a few episodes ago, Cam and I had a very, very heartfelt conversation about Dragon Age, specifically in the Veilguard, how it was released, the reception to it. I think that there is blood in the water around this game, unfortunately, which, I mean, like, I think the original presentation was not great, but I don't think it means the game looks bad. I think a lot of people think this, like, they are out for blood on this game. They are out for blood. They want this game to fail for some reason or another. There's been a few controversial things that gamers, of course, like to complain about. Like there was a reveal of the character creator. You can have mastectomy scars on your character. This is apparently a problem. I genuinely don't care. I mean, like, if I don't want to have mastectomy scars, I just won't have them on my character, and I guarantee you I won't have mastectomy scars on my character. So, like, I don't know. It's just one of those things gamers just get mad about, like PC culture and stuff like that. And, sometimes it's warranted. In this case, I just am like, I'm pretty indifferent to it. I just, it's an optional thing you can do in the character creator. I can easily ignore that. But they showed off some gameplay, some more in-depth gameplay. So one of the big complaints that I had about the initial showing of the gameplay was it was from basically a level 1 character. A level 1 character and pretty much 2 level 1 like party members. And it was like, okay, well, it's really difficult for you to show off the combat system when you're spamming a level 1 move over and over and over and over again. I'm not going to get a very good idea of if this combat is any good or not. And yeah, this is kind of a bit more in depth of what I was hoping to see. The problem is it's still not a very good showing, in my opinion. A boss fight is all well and good, but what they showed of the boss fight, I didn't necessarily need to see. Normally when you're showing off a boss fight, you're showing off the best bits from it. You're showing off, the cinematic elements of it, or, the epic grand scale of the fight or something like that. And there was a little bit of that in here. But at the end of the day, you're just kind of watching a mage chip away at this giant health bar. And I kind of was cool with that for like 30 seconds. And then I was like, okay, I guess that's all there really is to this demo. And I gotta say, like, they really have to start trying to show off this game a little bit better. It's really unfortunate to see they just seem to keep dropping the ball in making this game seem very good. Which, from what from everything I'm seeing, I don't think this game looks bad. I'm just kind of confused as to what they're choosing to show. Like, they're choosing to show things that I get why they're choosing to show it. Like the first demo they showed, it was like, well, this is the grand epic scale. Here's our, our landscapes that we have, or, here's our cool story moment that really sets up the game. Like that's what a lot of players are here for. So here's that. And here's this. It's like, here's a grand epic boss fight, like, with a later level character. I'm like, okay, I get it. Conceptually, I understand why you're showing me that. But there's just like things here and there that I'm like, any other video game PR team would have told you, we need to trim this up. We need to like maybe make a demo that's like specifically tailored to being shown off. Like this is, we need to alter the character build. Even though this is a level 1 area, let's alter the character build so we can show off some more of the moves. Even though this is like a late game boss, let's cut out that minute and a half where we're just kind of spamming the same moves and dodging stuff and kind of chipping away at that health bar. Let's just show the cool parts, those really eye-popping moments that are going to get people excited. And I think that this game still has potential to be good. I'm very skeptical of if it will be great, mainly just because BioWare is just not BioWare anymore, which is like, that's what makes BioWare games good, right? Is the people making them. And I don't think that those people are there anymore. I think that the studio has changed hands. I think it's gone through too much turmoil, and I think you're looking at a pretty much new team, or a vast majority of a new team making this game. It's hard to pin down if that's going to pan out. Ultimately, I was a little bit underwhelmed with this showing, but I still hold out hope that the game can be good, but we'll see. Up next was Alan Wake 2 DLC, The Lake House. I did not want to see more of this because I am definitely going to be playing it. It seems to be a little bit more traditionally Alan Wakey, like survival horror-esque. The previous DLC, which was shown off, I believe at the Game Awards or Summer Games Fest. Summer Games Fest. It was shown off at Summer Games Fest. Was more episodic, more comedic focused, and I absolutely adored it. I actually loved the trailer of it so much that I went out and I actually bought the deluxe add-on for the game. It wasn't very much money either, and Alan Wake 2 was my number 3 game of 2023. So I was 100% on board for that, and I loved that DLC. So I am. Not only do I already just have access to it because I bought the full deluxe version or deluxe upgrade, but like I know it's going to be good because I really love the base game and I really love the other DLC. So I'm highly looking forward to the Lake House. Really interested to see what they do with it moving forward, and it'll be released this October. So hopefully it'll be a nice spooky Halloween treat. Next up, we actually had another PSVR 2 announcement. What? That's crazy. Sony does care. Well, we'll get into that. So they showed off Hitman World of Assassination VR. So I love Hitman, specifically the newer Hitman. I tried to go back and play some of the older Hitman, and they just seemed they were not as forgiving. You really kind of have to master those games in order to get a lot out of them, and play them very cautiously. And I was just like, just show me how to do the really cool kills and make me feel like a Hitman. And the newer games definitely do that. I highly recommend them. They're a lot of fun. But the first game came out, and they did actually make a VR mode for PSVR 1 for those games. So it's not entirely, like off base for them to make one for PSVR 2 as well. Here's the thing. First mode kind of sucked because you had those move controllers. You didn't have like what we kind of consider now the optimal or traditional like VR controllers for your hands, that kind of are motion tracked and, actually kind of can show off your hands in a digital environment. Like PS Move really couldn't do that. It's clearly Sony just reutilizing tech from another thing that they had already had. So PSVR 2, this makes a lot more sense. And some of the stuff they showed off really it looked pretty cool. Being able to like wash the blood off of your hands so people don't notice you, and pull your gun around a corner without actually looking at what's around the corner and pulling the trigger like that. That's just like that's what you want to see in VR. Like that's just cool. Here's the thing: is that the original PSVR 1 thing mode for this game was also ported to PC, and it was panned critically across the board. Apparently, these VR ports for this game are shoddy at best. They don't work half the time. Obviously, we're seeing a trailer, so it's all stuff that's, curated to look really, really good. But, like, from what I've heard, these modes are typically trash fires. They don't turn out very well at all. So what looks to be a very nice get for PSVR 2, I have low hopes and expectations for, because apparently people really don't like it. So unfortunate there, but maybe this will prove me wrong. Or, well, not really me, because I didn't play the VR versions, but maybe this will prove the people that told me that wrong. I don't know. Only we can find out in time. Next, we have Legacy of Kain, Soul Reaver 1 and 2 Remaster. This was one of the big announcements, I feel like, at least for the hardcore gaming community. Soul Reaver, if you don't know, is from, I believe, Crystal Dynamics. I'd have to go back and double check. It's a horrible thing about having just one guy. Normally the other guy can Google it. But it's an old school game. Legacy of Kain, specifically Soul Reaver, are the ones people really remember and think of as like kind of classics. And they've been locked away for a really long time and have a very dedicated following. They're kind of Metroidvania style games, almost Tomb Raider-esque, kind of, if Crystal Dynamics, I remember that correctly. In fact, I'm pretty 99% sure it was Crystal Dynamics, but that makes sense because they also made Tomb Raider. But these games are supposed to be really freaking cool. They're supposed to be really awesome. Specifically, Amy Hennig wrote these games. If you don't know Amy Hennig, she's the writer of the first 3 Uncharted games. I believe all 3, yeah. She's the writer of all 3 Uncharted games and is credited for, just being a really great storyteller. And I'm way back in the day in G4 TV, there was a show called Cinematech. And I remember vividly watching the opening cutscene to Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver, and I was like, this seems kind of freaking awesome. Like, this is really actually kind of cool. And I think, this is a pretty decent upgrade too. Not only graphically, but control-wise. Once they told me, we changed the control scheme, I was like, I'm in. Because I've always been like, I got to go back to those at some point. Maybe I'll emulate them or something like that. But I've always been like, dude, I can't freaking deal with the old school. Like, I think it had tank controls. I was like, I can't deal with that. That is going to take me a long time to get used to. So I was like, no thanks. But they seem to have done a lot with these that is really going to make this a pretty decent package. And I'm looking forward to it, actually. I don't think I'll play it at release. I'll probably wait for it to drop in price a little bit. I'm not in any rush to get back to these games that came out, decades ago. But they are classics, and they do have I hear a lot of good things about them. It's very funny because this was supposed to be the reveal of this game, but it leaked. And the only reason I mention that is because I think it's a very funny way that it leaked. It leaked via a toy expo. At some trade show, they were showing off video game toys or figures, and one of them was a Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver figure, and on the bottom of it, on the plaque that was saying this is what this thing is, it was this is a Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver remaster figurine, and it was everybody's like, oh, well, I guess that's getting remastered. All right. So that's one of the many ways you can leak your game is via merch. But anyways, looking forward to that. Fear of the Spotlight. This is another look at one of the Blumhouse games that was shown off earlier this year. I think it looks pretty cool. The art style specifically is what tips it off. It's one of the PS1 looking games. I don't really dip my toe into horror too much, unless I'm playing with some friends or, it's a free game that I'm just I'll give it a shot for a little bit. Maybe this will be good. Maybe it won't. I think the art style is really going to carry it, but, this will be the debut for Blumhouse. It will be out Tuesday, October 22nd. So look forward to that. Then we had Towers of Og-Hasba. Og-Hasba. That's an interesting one. But this is another one that was a new announcement, at least to my knowledge, and didn't seem to have a lot of people talking. Nobody seemed to really talk about this game after the state of play at all. And I found that kind of interesting because I actually forgot about it. Looking back through everything, I was like, what the heck is this? I don't remember this being shown off. And it is a town builder that also looks to be a Breath of the Wild kind of looking game. And it actually looks pretty interesting. I'm not going to play it unless this game gets fantastic reviews. I'm not going to play it, but it's something to keep your eye on, I think. And I think being drastically underestimated from what I'm seeing conversation around it, which is none. So we'll see. Next, Lego Fortnite, or Lego Fortnite? Sorry, reading an article, it says Lego Fortnite controller, which I don't think it is. I think it's just regular Fortnite. So thanks, Eurogamer. Thanks for making me read that incorrectly. But they announced a new controller. It looks pretty horrible. It looks incredibly gaudy. This looks like, it's for children. I mean, like, it's for children. Like, let's be real. Like, I mean, Fortnite already is for kids, but like this looks like a child probably got a marker and started scribbling all over their controller. You just have the privilege of paying for that. Yeah, it's not interesting to me at all. But like, let's be real. I mean, Sony's been really pushing these custom controllers lately. This has been a really big thing. This used to be an Xbox thing. It was like, okay, well, Xbox is the people with the custom controllers. Now it's like, nah, dude, Sony apparently has like 50 million of these things. They keep pushing them out like every 3 months. There's like another one, limited edition, and they always sell out really, really fast. I mean, look at Concord's controller. You literally can't buy that on eBay for less than $300. So that's obviously for several other reasons other than just the exclusivity of the controller, the limited editionness of the controller. But anyway, another interesting mention there. Next was Dynasty Warriors Origins, another look at the game coming January 17th, 2025. This is another freaking Dynasty Warriors game. At this point, I am completely cemented in my opinion that there is nothing that will get me to play this game. It's another Dynasty Warriors game with maybe a better coat of paint. I don't anticipate wanting to play it. Once you play Dynasty Warriors for more than 5 minutes, you are pretty much done with it, I think. So I'm not very interested. Moving on. Monster Hunter Wilds. Another trailer for Monster Hunter Wilds coming out February 28th, Friday. And it is another trailer. I'm sure I would be able to dive into it deep and be like, this looks amazing. I love Monster Hunter if I loved Monster Hunter. Unfortunately, it has not grabbed me as of yet. I intend to go back. There's a couple of other Monster Hunter games I have access to via, free platforms here and there. I intend to go back and try, again, maybe before this game releases, just to make sure, do I really not want this freaking game? But right now, I'm not really sold on it. It looks like World, but with a different W word at the end of the title. So, I'm not incredibly sold. But, to each their own. I know a lot of people are. So, good for you guys. Next up, we had the pre-order bonus trailer for Lego Horizon Dawn, which was interesting. Because, you love a commercial that's just telling you to buy more stuff. I mean, that's literally what every trailer is, but like this was very, just pre-order the game, please, for the love of God, pre-order it. So, that's, a little obnoxious, but it is what it is. Clearly the game's trying to have a sense of humor. I was kind of down on this game, mainly because it's just a Lego game. And I was like, well, normally Lego games don't really review that well. They're all okay, but, they're all pretty baby games, and, they are what they are. It is what it is. And then I did some research on this one, and it's apparently developed by Guerrilla. And I was like, what the frick? Like, nobody told me that. Like, I feel like this should be way more, like, upfront and in your face. Like, this is a Lego game that is developed by Guerrilla, the people who made Horizon Zero Dawn. Like, what? Like, okay, like, that's an interesting thing for them to do. You'd think it would just be the Lego studio. I can't remember that. It's like it starts with an I. It's like a 2-letter name studio, but I can't remember. But the Lego studio that would do these games or this game, but no, it is the entire, or it is a portion of Guerrilla's team that will be doing this. So very interesting there, and that segues us into one of the big talking points of the state of play, which was they announced the Horizon Zero Dawn Remaster. Yes, that's right, ladies and gentlemen. That game that came out on the PlayStation 4, you can play it again. Remastered. Yeah. Big deal here. And by big deal, I mean a lot of people were kind of expecting it. It had been come out. This was the remaster that had kind of leaked that people said was not going to be it was going to be less interesting than the Horizon Zero Dawn Remaster. That was what Jeff Grubb reported, which is funny because it is the Horizon Zero Dawn Remaster. So you really, I guess, maybe it can be less exciting if you already expected it to be that. I don't know. But anyway, point is, this is a Last of Us Part 1 style remaster. So increased or better visuals. They went back and did complete like voice mocap retuning. So they got the actors back in, made them re-record everything. So it's all smooth with their face and all that other stuff. I'm sure it'll have PlayStation 5 features that were incorporated from the ground up, so on and so forth. This is an interesting one. So this was kind of one of those things people have known is coming for a while, but we all were kind of assuming, like, once the Lego game got announced, we assumed that was the remaster. And now we're back to just like, oh no, it was a real remaster. Okay, like, this is clearly something Sony is, really trying to just push, is remaking these games that more or less don't really need a remaster at all. And I think The Last of Us Part 1 sold pretty well, and I think there's a reason for that. And that's because The Last of Us Part 1 came out at the same time that the hit HBO show The Last of Us, which was based on Season 1 of The Last of Us, the video game, came out. So there was a huge push of people just being like, The Last of Us video game, I like the show, I'm going to play that. And they probably just went and bought the newest one, which was probably the best plan if they had never played it, to be quite honest. But for anybody like a hardcore gamer who doesn't have a TV show to inspire them to play the game again, like, I don't know why you would want this per se. Like, you really just have to be like in the mood to play Horizon Zero Dawn again. The big controversy here is they are offering a $10 increase. So if you own the original game in any capacity, so my understanding is I can put my physical disc of Horizon Zero Dawn into my PS5, and if I pay $10, I will gain access to the digital, I would assume the digital version, but the remastered version of the game. If I have a digital copy of the game, I will be able to pay $10, and I will be upgraded to the premium remaster quality. They increased the price of the original game on PSN, so it moved up in price right after the release announcement, or the announcement of the re-release. So it is kind of a scummy move, but at the same time, I'm kind of sitting here like, well, if you wanted to play Horizon Zero Dawn so bad, I feel like you probably would have done it. It's been out for what? I don't want to say a decade. I have to Google this. Horizon Zero Dawn release date.
Horizon Zero Dawn.
Okay, shush. 2017, so 7 years. Okay, so you had 7 years to decide if you wanted to play this game. The sequel came out, and you said, I'll hold off. I'll hold off until the trilogy is complete. The game was given away for free on PlayStation Plus Basic. So if you had access to a PlayStation Plus subscription, you would have access to this game. And you're telling me you're mad now that they're up in the price? Like, yeah, like, should Sony have done that at all? Like, in a perfect world, no. But also, in a world that we're in right now, that also kind of makes sense. Like, it also kind of is like, why didn't you just freaking do that already? Like, clearly, this remaster is here. Like, they're giving you the $10 upgrade in the first place. So, like, you are not the target audience. Like, they are clearly just, like, if you already own the game, of course you're going to get the freaking $10 upgrade. If you didn't own the game, your best bet should have just been to play the remaster anyway. Because, obviously, that's going to be the best version of the game. So you probably, if you felt the need to play it now, you'd go and just get the remaster. So, I mean, and Sony doesn't want to be cheaped out by you and be like, well, the remaster is $50, but if I buy the game right now on PSN, it's $20, and I can just get the $10 upgrade, bang, 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 boom, I'm saving like $20, or something like that. So I kind of get it. In all honesty, like Sony's logic here is pretty sound, and, it is what it is. There also was reporting from Jason Schreier after this that Horizon MMO is actually what Guerrilla is currently working on. So a Horizon 3 is something that is likely going to be pushed much further. There's definitely conversation you can have around this. It's so early on, it's hard for me to really have it. This is, again, another live service game Sony's trying to push. They're taking away one of their major teams to make it, and pausing a trilogy that is clearly like hovering around a like cliffhanger with the second game currently. So it's I don't love the sound of that. Especially after Concord, I think everybody's kind of has their eyebrows raised a little bit, like, what the frick is going to happen with these live service games? I am not as concerned as most people, but yeah, I mean, I'm not interested in Horizon MMO. Obviously, I'm a single player primary gamer. Sony is really expecting this Horizon brand to take the frick off. I don't know if that was the right pony to bet on. I would have bet on God of War personally. Horizon maybe has a little bit more of an all-around appeal, but God of War is probably a little bit more bro-y. But I don't know enough. I would say this, of course, doesn't sound great for many reasons, but I don't know. Apparently, Guerrilla is very diverse in their skill set because they're also making a freaking Lego game. So, as long as they keep it in Horizon, apparently they make good games. So, moving on. Stellar Blade is getting DLC for Nier Automata. A photo mode and DLC with specifically 2B. It's very funny because, Yoko Taro, of course, came out and said something freaking laughable and said, we'll do anything if the price is right, pretty much is what he said. He's just a funny guy. I like Yoko Taro's style, and by that I mean his literal insanity, it seems. But, I mean, like, we all kind of have made comparisons to Nier and Stellar Blade. There's a lot that can be made there. I mean, they literally got the composer of the original Nier Automata to do some songs for Stellar Blade. Some of the songs are incredibly reminiscent. Literally felt like I was playing Nier Automata when I was playing the demo for it earlier this year. So it seems like a very good crossover, and I'm happy to see it. In all honesty, I'm not gonna say it was like unforetellable, but it is something I think that's interesting. So I don't know when I'll get around to Stellar Blade or if I'll get around to Stellar Blade, but to those who will, there you go. Next, they announced some new PlayStation Plus games. This month is honestly kind of a banger. It's WWE 2K24, Doki Doki Literature Club Plus, which we'll be talking about later in the podcast, and Blood Omen, Dead Space. Oh, I missed that one. Excuse me. Dead Space, the remaster, or the remake? We're going to say remake on that one. Remake of Dead Space. That's a huge get. I love Dead Space. I'll talk about Doki Doki Literature Club Plus, but it's a great game too. And then they're also going to be offering Blood Omen, Legacy of Kain, and Dino Crisis to the PlayStation Plus catalog later. Those are obviously like coming alongside the Legacy of Kain remaster announcement. That's nice to see. I don't think those earlier games are supposed to be anywhere near as good. I mean, if you look at them, they are like, I think they're a little too dated for anybody to really get much enjoyment out of now, but it's cool to see. And then Dino Crisis is actually a game I've always heard good things about, and I do want to see, but I'd rather honestly play it as a remaster than like as a PlayStation 1 port, but there it is. And then they also said, hey, The Last of Us Part 1, why not? You can also have that for free as part of September 26th. That's the Last of Us Day, which, if you didn't know, canonically, the Zombie Outbreak Society falls on September 26th in the game itself. So they just were like, yeah, have The Last of Us Part 1, which I wasn't freaking going to pay money for that game because I've played The Last of Us 1 a couple of times, actually. I played it originally, and then they remastered it on the PlayStation 4 because Last of Us was actually originally a PlayStation 3 game. It's crazy to even think that. But it was a late PlayStation 3 game, the last PlayStation 3 game from Sony, I think, that was released. And then they remastered it for the PlayStation 4, and I played it there. I think they gave that away for free as well, and I replayed it there. And now they're just like, well, we made it again for the PlayStation 5, and we'll just give it to you for free. And I was like, cool, because I didn't really want to play it again that much, but maybe I'll give it a shot again as part 1 to see, because clearly this is something Sony's going to continue to frickin' do. So this is, another thing that I can maybe see. This is what we're going to be treated for every Sony IP moving forward. Who knows? And then the big mic drop. Here's the thing. I wasn't expecting anything big at all. I was expecting, the Horizon Zero Dawn remaster to be the big thing Sony was gonna show off. And then they came out and they said, actually, we got a show closer. And that's Ghost of Yotei. That's right. Or excuse me, not Yotei, Yotei. I've heard people say that and it's ruined me. It's Yotei, not Yotei. Yotei would be an AI, ends with an EI. That's Yotei. Yotei is the sequel, kind of, to Ghosts of Tsushima. So they even confirmed, or they even gave a release date of 2025, which wasn't expecting that either. So this is the next game in the Ghost of Tsushima franchise, and kind of blew me away a little bit. I thought the obvious answer was to keep going with Jin, and what they showed off was, this is a new game with a new protagonist. You're in a new area of Japan, a new time period, and this is a new character. Like, we aren't really going to be focusing on Jin at all. He's not going to be even alive in this particular period of time. So, very interesting choice, but this is not something that Sucker Punch is totally a stranger to. Infamous did the same thing. They completely ditched the main protagonist, Cole, for a new protagonist in Infamous Second Son. In the third game of the series, actually, they didn't stick with Cole. They just canonically killed him off, I guess, spoiler. Anyway, all I needed to hear was it's coming. We already knew, let's be real, we already knew that it was obviously like Sony was making another Ghost of Tsushima game. What the real big thing here is, it's a new protagonist, and Sony came out and essentially stated, hey, this is a series that we really want to make into something bigger than just a game. Like, we want it to make it into movies. We want to make TV shows. We want to make other spin-off games within this series. And it seems like, I mean, you could technically classify this as a spin-off, I would think, rather than a sequel. But I think this is a big deal. This is a big deal. We finally have the next Ghosts game slated for release in 2025. And that's the state of play. That's the state of play. That was the big mic drop. Here's the thing. I actually liked the state of play. I actually liked it a good bit. A lot of these games are tailored to me and my interests fairly well. And at the end of the day, like, I'd give this show, like, let's just get right into the rating here. I give this show like a B minus maybe. Like, I saw a lot of people saying this was a C show. I mean, this blew. I like I've been stating, I had very, very, very low expectations. So this is much, much better than I anticipated it being. And I mean, just the announcement of Ghost of Tsushima or Ghost of Yotei alone is really enough to put me over. Sucker Punch is my favorite video game studio ever. They've created some of my favorite games ever. So like, this being that is like, more of that from that studio is, I mean, I can't complain. And I think that Sucker Punch has a really great track record of improving upon their games as well. Sly Cooper 1 to 2 is a massive jump in terms of quality, and Infamous 1 and 2, like, let's be real, Infamous 2 is the best game in that series. So like, I genuinely am super excited to see what Sucker Punch will do with this, going from Ghost 1 to 2. I think that you can expect some really great improvements. I'm hoping that's the case, at least. They could really rest on their laurels here and just make it kind of an Assassin's Creed style improvement of some base, little tweaks here and there that just kind of make the game better overall, that are nigh unnoticeable to an already good base game. But I genuinely don't think Sucker Punch is that kind of studio based on their track record, and I foresee a really nice improvement overall. But maybe that's just the Sucker Punch fanboy in me speaking. I don't know. But overall, like, that really, really made this like showing like a really banger on top of everything else that was in there. Yeah, really, really good. But we have one other thing, and it kind of ties into that announcement of Ghost of Yotei, actually, which is why I saved it for the second half of the news. It's one of our 2 news stories. Normally I have like frickin' 10, which I'm honestly pretty happy about that. But this today is different. And we already kind of talked about it on the last episode, but so much more has happened. I was like, I can't just ignore this. There were a lot of like nothing burger stories this past couple of weeks, like people were trying to talk about stuff, but I was like, I really just don't care about any of that. And I'm not going to talk about it if I don't care about it. So like this, I was like, this is just, Ubisoft. Oh my gosh. Ubisoft just keeps crumbling here. It's just no good news from Ubisoft. So the CEO of Ubisoft, Mr. Guillemot, he came out and he had an investor call. He directly addressed the investors because, as we discussed last week, they are not very happy with him right now. Stock price has been dropping significantly. And, they specifically addressed him and were like, hey, maybe you need to do something about this. And he was like, hey, I am French. Listen. I'm not even going to try with that. I was going to try to do a really funny French accent, and because I don't think it's racist to do French accents. And it was going to be great, but I can't do that. Blame it on the COVID. He basically came out and said, hey, everything's going to be cool. Listen, we're delaying Assassin's Creed Shadows into next year, specifically February 14th. Okay? And we're going to get rid of the season pass on it. Okay? People will be cool with that. Okay? And then, I heard you guys talking, and you said that Star Wars Outlaws didn't do very well. Let me confirm. It only sold 1 million copies in the first month. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to put out a patch and we're going to fix all the problems those gamers have been complaining about. We've listened. We've heard. And now we're going to act. We're going to change it up. We're going to make sure that all those problems, they're gone. Don't worry about it. And he was like, click. And, that's not good. Well, here's the thing. Let's dissect this. So, Jeff Grubb reports after this call that this delay in Shadows was actually called for internally by developers who were saying that this game was a quote-unquote buggy mess. So, Assassin's Creed is apparently really underbaked right now, and this is kind of up to par for a lot of big AAA games, but certainly Ubisoft games. Star Wars Outlaws was supposed to be this massive hit, and I'm not going to say it bombed, but let's be real, it has a 75 on Metacritic, 76, 75, and 1 million copies for anything in the Star Wars IP that had that much marketing behind it. That's not good. I'm not going to say that's bad. 1 million people were touting that headline around like it was like, oh, bring out your dead, like Star Wars Outlaws, bring out your dead, I don't think it's that bad. But for this level of like a AAA game and this high of an IP, this notable of an IP, 1 million sales should be I mean, it should have easily hit 3. It should have easily hit 3 million sales within the first month. And 1 million is clearly soft. Like, it's not like it's not like horrific. And I hear people talking about that game, and it sounds like it has a tail. You know, it sounds like people are like, well, it gets better at the end, and I think people are going to look back on it, and they're going to say it's all right, and it's not like a total train wreck. It's just like different. And it's like, well, cool. That doesn't help Ubisoft's financial outlook. So that's unfortunate. But, you know, I think it's ridiculous that they're going back and adding this stuff after patch, or after launch via patch. You know, like, let's be real, like, the boat has sailed. Like, if you were interested in Star Wars Outlaws, you bought a copy already. I really think it's interesting seeing all these games go back and add these patches. And while I totally appreciate it, because I'm not normally the guy that goes out and buys it day one or whatever, normally. I've kind of been changing my tune on that a little bit recently. I've bought more games day one this year than I think I ever have, but that's not very many. But I normally play games much further down the line. Is like, I appreciate that because I get the better product. But the vast majority of sales are like day one, you know. So most players have already bought into this bad product. You've already gotten most of your sales. The tail that you're improving by with this patch is like, who is really, one, paying attention? You have to listen to an investor call to know that this game is getting all these patches. And two, like, so you have to be already really hardcore. And two, care. Like, you know, you have to care. You know, you have to still be playing this game, you know, a month plus after launch, which if you really cared about it, likely you're either done with it or finished, like you beat it, one of the two. And, you know, I don't see this bringing in a large number of players back to the game or into the game for the first time. So, like, while I really appreciate that, I don't see it as that big of a help. So, back to Assassin's Creed, because all this stuff compiles onto each other. This is honestly a freaking sandwich of a story, because it's so many different things compiling on top of each other. Back to Assassin's Creed Shadows. Moved it to February 14th, 2025. So February is an interesting time to do that, because it currently is the most packed release schedule of the year. We have other games such as Civilization VII, Avowed, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, Like a Dragon, the Pirate spinoff, and, oh, yeah, Monster Hunter Wilds, all coming out in that month, some of which coming out on that week. So, like, Assassin's Creed Shadows has a lot more competition than it did right now. A lot more competition, a lot bigger hitters in February. Not only that, but to tie into what we were just talking about, not Assassin's Creed. Ghosts of Tsushima 2 is coming out in 2025. So that means both of these games are coming out in the same year. Rutrow, like, that's probably bad considering most people talk about Ghosts of Tsushima and they say, oh yeah, you mean the good Assassin's Creed game that took place in the place that we wanted it to take place in for the past decade, and Ubisoft just never did that. And like, here Ubisoft is crying and pleading like, oh yeah, remember you wanted the Assassin's Creed Japan, like, here it is, isn't that cool? And we're all just like, well, we have an alternative to that now that we now deem as like a higher quality product than what you have been pushing out. So not really. Well, he actually commented on that too and said, oh, well, hey, there's room for both of us. Both of these games can sell well in 2025, which is like, I think your saving grace is you're coming out in February, you're coming out at the beginning of the year. I see Yotei is a like late 2025 game, so you pray to God that nobody is like, well, I'll just hold off, you know, like, I'll just get it, I'll go with the original. That happened with Callisto Protocol and Dead Space remake last year. Was like, it seemed to be that Callisto Protocol probably sold better than Dead Space remake just simply because they moved the release date up, and people just got their Dead Space fill, which really highly unfortunate considering that game is not very good and the remaster is. But, it is what it is. I feel like that's just Ubisoft's only freaking saving grace now that Ghosts of Yotei has been announced. I think it's comical to say that both of these games will sell well. It will clearly eat into it. I think though, let's be real. We're getting off on a negative train. Okay, let's pump the brakes. Will they both sell well? I don't foresee a world in which Assassin's Creed Japan does not sell well. I think it will sell fine. Will it sell as good as it would have if Ghosts of Tsushima 2 was not in the same calendar year? Yeah, probably not. Like that's probably is going to deflate its hype a little bit, deflate interest, and maybe people will say, "Hey, I only got so much money for these $70 games. Maybe I'll wait until that one later in the year that's supposed to be better comes out." Oh, well, who knows? So I think very interesting, pushing it back. Clearly, they're spooked. They are spooked that this game is not going to sell very well, which also, they got rid of the season pass model. I smell that as a sign of desperation. Like, let's be real. Like, any AAA developer that's like, well, we decided to remove the season pass model, is like, that's like them. That's the most scared, silly move I've ever seen from a publisher in my entire life. Like, we just didn't want, to scare anyone away with the season pass model. Like, when has that changed your tune ever before? like no one has ever. Everybody has always been like, we don't want a season pass in a single player game, and they're like, well, makes us more money, so it's just gonna be there. Like, this is Ubisoft capitulating in a way I've never seen, and I think that's a real sign of fear. After this, two big things happen. An activist investor comes out and says, hey, I want two things. One, I want an internal investigation because I think you kind of suck at your job. I think you've made too many bad moves. I think you've made too many horrific failure of a moves too quick, and we need to make sure everything's on the up and up here. I want an internal investigation. Number two, I want this company to sell itself. I want somebody else in charge. You're not doing a good job. The Guimont family, which owns Ubisoft, I want them out. Like, sell it to somebody. Take your money and go because you're just not doing it for me anymore. After that, Tencent comes out and says, hey, we kind of started talking with Ubisoft about buying them. Maybe we're the kind of guys who are good for the job. We'll take over Ubisoft and we have all more money than God. We will just buy them. Which, probably not good for gamers having, your Chinese company run, the video games you like, but it is what it is. I think Ubisoft has been ripe for acquisition for a while now. Microsoft has been buying things up left and right. Sony's been making some pretty big purchases. We've seen a lot of the video game industry consolidating in a way, and if Activision is up for grabs, obviously anybody is, and I just look at Ubisoft as like another kind of Bethesda-level publisher that's like, we're not doing so hot. Bethesda was not doing so well, and they got bought out by Microsoft to basically save them. I see Ubisoft doing something very similar with Tencent, and I assume they would do it with... I thought Sony would have probably been a good partner. I think Microsoft doesn't need a lot of other big acquisitions, but I think that Sony probably could have taken on a Ubisoft. Tencent makes sense too. They have a lot of money to throw around, and I don't want Tencent to acquire them. But, it is... it may just be their best for a company perspective. It's just whoever has the biggest bags of money, and they do. So, that's kind of what they're looking at. is to be acquired, and Ubisoft came out and said, and this was another headline that I was like, that's just a nothing burger, but essentially said like, we're always evaluating offers from external parties, and it's like, well, yeah, that's just business, that's just how that works. So I wasn't too, that was like people like looking at that as like an admission that they were trying to sell, and it's like, no, like that's just what happens. If somebody comes to you with an offer, you just look it over and make sure it's a good one or a bad one. And if it works for you, it does. If it doesn't, you turn it away. That's just how every business works. So, I'm not too surprised by that. But I do think that, there's so much pressure on these guys, it kind of makes sense. Stock price for Ubisoft is down 30% over the month, over the past month. When the last investor wrote a letter and was like, hey, we need to kind of rethink some things, Ubisoft, like, you're not doing so great. Like, that kind of started a tumbling effect of the stock price just keeping going down and down and down. And, Star Wars Outlaws selling poorly, not great. Assassin's Creed Shadows being moved out of the calendar year, not great. Like, that's going to spook some investors for sure. It's going to hurt their money a lot. And so they're going to be a little bit probably selly, more so than buy-y with your stock. So yeah, down 30%, that's freaking horrific. So all this to say, Ubisoft ain't looking so good. But I think the end for us gamers, right now at least, is that Ubisoft is running scared. Ubisoft is doing a lot. I think Outlaws really underperformed for them, like a lot. And I think that, this is everything Ubisoft is doing with Shadows right now is a reaction to that, because they need Shadows to be a hit. Like, it has to succeed. Because if it doesn't, they're just going to be, that stock price is going to keep going lower and lower and lower. And, it is what it is at this point. It's a Guillemot thing, the Guillemot family that owns it. They are clearly the ones that have kind of dug this hole, I think, and it's their problem, and it's their money mostly, or obviously the investors too. But I think Ubisoft has so many big IP, you really don't want Ubisoft to go away. Like, you have to keep Ubisoft around. They have too many big IP, too many legendary IP. But like, gosh darn. I thought I went on for too long last episode about Ubisoft, but here we are. Like, they just, I'm not going to say they can't catch a break, because I think that they're kind of responsible for this. So it is what it is, but we'll see. Keep an eye on them. Make sure they maybe buy a copy of Shadows in a few months to help them out. But anyway, moving on from the news to gaming impressions, which we have a lot of this episode, actually, more so than usual. Normally I have like one, maybe two small games that I'm playing. I try to complete them before playing them, and this week with COVID, you got some time. You have some time, not necessarily enjoyable time, but time, because you kind of want to feel like you're dying a little bit, but that's what COVID does. So, anyway, I went through a lot of my PlayStation Plus catalog, and I tried to get some games just kind of knocked off the backlog. I love to streaming games, and these catalogs have really made it easy for me to just like taste a game, play it for an hour or maybe even less than that, and just be like, okay, yeah, I get it, and move on. Add it to my repertoire of like, well, yeah, I didn't really like that, or oh yeah, I can see that being a potential. Most of the time it's really didn't enjoy my time with that too much. But like in this case, I decided to get to some games that I thought would be easy passes. In fact, I started off, we'll just call this like my one-shot-a-palooza on a bunch of freaking free games, but my first games that I played were added to the PlayStation Extra catalog, all of the Sword Art Online games, which if you don't know, Sword Art Online is an anime, a fairly mixed reception anime, an anime that's gigantic, very, very popular, but critically it is not very accepted. So the video games is based on a video game world. So it's about a character who goes into a video game, and like that's kind of where the adventures take place. And the Sword Art Online video games are all in the 60s on Metacritic. So you can kind of expect that means they're all garbage. And wouldn't you know, they are. And I just expected them all to be generic JRPG trash, and they certainly are, but all in their own special ways. There's like freaking 6 of them, and one of them is probably the most bored I've been playing a video game in a long time. It is like, it's honestly kind of comical, and I didn't want to talk about these games for very long, and I'm going to try to keep it very short, but like they are all really bad in their own way. They are all incredibly text heavy. They don't follow the story of the series at all. They follow these side stories that aren't very well written and aren't very interesting. The gameplay is incredibly horrific. And in some cases, the games don't even let you get to the gameplay without like reading 2 hours worth of exposition for characters that aren't very interesting in the first place. So like, there's nothing I can say to recommend these games at all, like in any way, shape, or form. They all suck, every single one of them. And even though like they kind of change from each one to another in some ways that I was actually kind of impressed by, but at the end of the day, like they are all so fundamentally horrific. Like even as like a fan of the show, I couldn't even see a fan of the show liking those games. They're horrible. They really are that bad. Honestly, kind of surprised they are in the 60s on Metacritic. I was really expecting lower. Anyway, moving on. The next game I decided to try, I actually thought I was going to like. It was a game from a series that I really like, kind of. Depends how you want to spin that. But it is Gotham Knights. It's a game that I really wanted to try when it was free, and it was leaving PlayStation Plus Extra. It was one of the games that was announced as leaving, and I was like, oh, well, I should probably give it a shot before it leaves, because I kind of wanted to give it a shot. I know it's kind of got mixed reception. You know, it's not supposed to be as good as the Arkham games, but the Arkham games are some of my favorite video games, like, ever. So I'd like to give it a shot. And I did. And I was like, it's been so long since that game released, and it honestly sold really, really well. That thing was in the top 20 of the charts for like months. It kept coming back in, and I was expecting maybe it to be okay. Probably something I could finish. I couldn't remember why people didn't like it because it had just been so long. I was like, oh, well, we'll see. We'll get in there. Yeah, this game's horrible. It's not good. It's like, as soon as I got in there, it was like, I punched a guy, or I like took out a guy in stealth, and damage numbers came over his head, and I was like, oh, we're not in Kansas anymore, Toto. Like, holy frick. Like, that's not a good sign. Like, I forgot that this game had, like, damage numbers and, like, freaking gear upgrades, or like, like Destiny style, like loot pickups and stuff like that. I was like, oh frick, this is not the same freaking game, is it? The problem is that, the open world is fairly similar. Obviously it's a Batman game, and then the combat itself is definitely trying to emulate the Batman games, the Arkham games. So not only do you have damage numbers, the combat has been obviously severely altered to fit that. It does not feel anywhere near as good. And then traversal is, oh my gosh, it's so bad. You cannot glide. None of them have capes, like Batman. And I guess that's the only thing that allowed him to glide. Well, I guess in a video game, that's the only thing that allowed him to glide. And so like, you can't glide anywhere. So you have to drive your motorcycle around, which I didn't particularly find very fun, or you have to grapple to every single like ledge of every single building, and it's the slowest, most boring thing ever. And I absolutely hated traversing the city. It was slow, it was clunky, and like it was the death sentence. Like I was like, I'm willing to try and keep going, but the story, I didn't really care about the story. Batman's not freaking in the game. I didn't really care about the cast. They don't do a very good job pulling you in. I didn't care about the villains. And again, like, I played the game for like 2 hours, and I just felt like it was really not trying to push me in any correct direction. Yeah, I mean, there was nothing I really enjoyed about that game. Honestly, I think it's in the 70s on Metacritic. I'm surprised it isn't way worse. Surprised it isn't like in the 60s. Yeah, it's hard for me to defend that one. Eesh. So I'll move on from it and move into Doki Literature Club Plus. So that was, like I said earlier, one of the free PlayStation Plus games that were given away at the beginning of October. And the funny thing about this one is I've actually played it before. Not Plus, but the original version. Plus kind of indicates it's, whatever, Ultimate Edition, Director's Cut, however you want to, kind of spin that. But this one was something I never got around to because I played the original. The original is a free, like, itch.io game. This is a game that became, I guess I should give kind of a high-level overview for people who haven't played it before, but it is it's a visual novel. It's a visual novel where you date anime girls in a literature club. Very cutesy, but it's really messed up, bro. It's super messed up. And that's like, the kind of the twist of the game, and that's not a spoiler, by the way. This game is honestly kind of comically shrouded in like mystery. Like, it's one of those things online that you just like people like, don't shut up, dude, don't let him figure it out, let him figure it out. And it's like, okay, the game literally opens like before you even get to the main menu. It opens up and is like, hey, just an FYI, this game's kind of messed up, bro. And it's like, okay, well, clearly I'm in for something here. Like, this game doesn't look messed up, so something weird happens in this game. And so, I'm not one of those guys that's like, yo, freaking don't shut the frick up. Let everybody figure it out, man. It's not cool. Don't tell anybody. So you will figure out that there's something kind of messed up. But anyway, it was kind of a big deal on the internet because it's like, that is just like one of the things that it really, and if I wanted to get into it more, I don't think I will, but it has a lot of, and because I will still like try to keep it kind of on the down low just in case, but I think it has a lot of elements that resonate with a internet crowd, specifically like the messed up elements. Like that's one of those things that I think people talk about, and people spread, and like it became a big word of mouth game over its course of, it's, I'm not even going to say life cycle. It was a free game on itch.io. But anyway, I heard about it. I heard it was free, and I heard it wasn't that long, so I gave it a shot. And I thought it was cool, but I thought the hype around it was a little ridiculous. So I was like, okay, some kids found this, and that, like, this is their first time seeing something like this, and, it is what it is. This is very kind of Markiplier fodder. I'm sure he played it at some point. And maybe PewDiePie did, something like that. And I played Plus, and I have to say I really enjoyed my time with it a lot more, and it's not different in any major way to kind of put that out there. And I will go into that a little bit more in a second, but it's seeing I kind of analyzed it a little bit more going through it a second time, and I kind of noticed what the game was trying to do a little bit better because I knew what the twist was. I knew, kind of what the game was building to and how it was building to it, and I kind of analyzed that a little bit more, and I was like, oh, no, I actually kind of really like this game. But this is a game that I haven't thought about in a while, but like when I went back and I hit that twist moment, like my gut still dropped, like it was still very impactful. And I really think that just like that moment in and of itself is kind of worth playing the game for. And I think the game still does some stuff that I think is really interesting, even post that. And I'd certainly recommend it in that way, just, because it's freaking free. And like, it's like a 4-hour game. It's really only 4 hours. So it's not that much of an investment. And I think if you're, up to reading for a couple of hours, especially once you get past that initial hump, it's and you get to hit the twist, it's like, okay, yeah, it's totally worth it. For the Plus version, all they really add, well, they change a couple of things. One is they add some side stories. That's like the big addition, which is totally not worth doing. I skipped through most of them. They are prequel stories that give like the backstory to the characters and how they met and, why they all wanted to join the literature club and stuff like that. This is like not necessary at all, because like these characters are intentionally kind of two-dimensional, and like that's kind of part of what the game is attempting to do with them, is they're pretty tropey characters. And like you're not really supposed to care about them per se and very deeply, and like it's like a couple of hours of just visual novel prequel stuff for characters that aren't very interesting. So like, and it's not focusing on what makes it interesting at all, which is the twist. So like, it's not worth doing at all, in my opinion. There's some like director's notes and stuff like that you can kind of unlock as you go. It's cool to see that, I guess, but again, not worth paying like $15 for. I think this game was $15 on PlayStation Store before it went free. And what I think the most interesting changes they made was like this game was originally released on PC for a reason. It's because it couldn't work on console. There were some mechanics in the game that made it pretty much exclusively playable on PC. And I was very interested to see how they incorporated that or changed that in the console release. And ultimately what they do is they kind of change the meta narrative. They don't necessarily change it, but they add on to the meta narrative. And in doing so, I think it's kind of a zero-sum move. Like, I think, like, good for them to add on to that and add a little bit more flavor to the game and its universe. I think that in doing so, they take away a really interesting element that I appreciated from the game, that like I thought was cool, in kind of transferring that to the console and adding that meta narrative. I think it makes it more accessible. I think it does give it a little bit more flavor text, that makes the game more interesting as a lore perspective. But at the end of the day, like, I would still recommend the PC version of this game, mainly because it's freaking free and you get exactly what you need, nothing more. And, like, you really get that sting of the PC mechanics that I really think is worth experiencing. And, it is what it is. I think if you have a PlayStation Plus account, easily play this game, especially for October. Like, it's a great October game. It's kind of got a little bit of spooky vibe to it. Just a little bit, not to spoil anything, but just a little bit. And I think, this is a huge get for people, because I think it's one of those things people aren't going to take a gamble on a lot of times, because it just looks like not a lot of people's not, oh, that's not my game, like that's an anime visual novel romance game, I'm going to play that. And then, you get around to it and it's like, oh, this is not that at all. So I really actually do recommend that game highly. And I think, try to go in as blind as you can, but no, it's kind of messed up, bro. It's kind of messed up. Next, we have 2 new releases, one of which I just played a couple days ago, but I'm going to start with the Plucky Squire. That's right, Devolver Digital's new release. Henry, you don't buy games that release. What the heck? No, I don't. And that's because Plucky Squire was actually a free PlayStation Extra game day of release. And I was like, that's interesting. Now, I think part of that is Sony does have a stake in Devolver Digital. A minority stake, but they have a stake. So if it was going to be free anywhere, it was definitely going to be free on PlayStation Plus. But when I heard that, I was like, I don't know, this kind of looks like one of the stronger games that Devolver Digital has coming out. Like I'm expecting this game to be really, really good. And they're releasing it for free day one for PlayStation Plus Extra. Like, that's kind of generous of them. I expected this game to really knock it out of the park. And I got into it. And let me tell you, let's just start from the top. So the Plucky Squire is about a squire who some may consider to be plucky, and essentially it's the story of a children's book. The art style is very reminiscent of a children's drawing for a children's book, and very cartoony. And there's an evil wizard, and you have to save the day. And he's taking control of the story because he never wins, and so he has to in order to win, he has to kick you out of the book, the hero. And in the process of doing that, he kicks you into the real world because you're in the book. And when he does that, it is 3D. You turn into a 3D character, and you're no longer a side-scrolling character like you were in the 2D book world. You are walking around on a child's desk, and you're able to traverse the world in a 3D space. And this looked really good. And in trailers and even in the game itself. This was easily the hook of the game, was the 2D to 3D transitions and how you interact with the worlds in between each other. This game has great art styles. I guess is technically accurate. Cutscenes, transitions between 2D and 3D worlds is cool. I mean, from a visual standpoint, this game really knocks it out of the park. And that's the best thing I got to say about it. After that, this is really kind of a mediocre game. And that's really disappointing for me to say. I hate to say that because this game is I beat it. I didn't have any walkthroughs or anything to help me out like that because it was day one. But I beat it in less than 8 hours. So this is a very short game. That's in-game timer. I beat it in less than 8 hours, which is kind of crazy. And I have no intention of going back to it. But that means that there's very little time for much to be delved into in this game, and it really feels like that. This is quite possibly one of the most basic Zelda-likes I've ever played. So pretty much everything in the book world is kind of like a Zelda-like, but if you stripped out almost everything that made Zelda interesting. So combat itself is even super stripped down. You do have some upgrades that you can buy, but even those feels pretty simplistic. I hardly ever used them. You really don't upgrade much other than that. There's not a lot of exploration. It's very linear. The puzzles themselves are not very interesting until a later quarter, maybe even less than that. Later eighth of the game is the game finally starts kind of okay, let's actually start using these mechanics in an interesting way. And I remember one or two puzzles in which I was okay, we're finally starting to get going here. We're really starting to kind of think outside the box on how to utilize these, 2D, 3D world interactions. And that was it. And then the game ended. And I was oh, that really should have been in the first third of the game, and we really should have built from that. That's kind of where I got from this. 3D segments are fairly similar. You'd expect maybe, okay, well, the 2D segments are kind of flat, but maybe the 3D segments pop a bit more. And no, they don't. Again, the art style, great. I mean, I can't complain about the art style at all, but I mean, 3D elements are pretty much just the exact same thing. It's just you get to jump around in a 3D space. And I mean, it never goes anywhere. Boss fights, nothing. I mean, this is it's even kind of more of an insult here because the boss fights aren't even utilizing the mechanics either. They're mini games. Specifically, there's 3 boss fights in the game, and they are reused multiple times. One is a rhythm game, so it's what is that game? Oh man, where you have to press that's every rhythm game, but you basically have to just press the button in time with an object coming at you in order to repel it. So it's a rhythm game, just straight up. A Punch-Out clone and a Bubble Bobble mini game. So matching 3 orbs. Like it's none of them are particularly well done. It's just they're just there, and they phase in for the boss fights. That could have been interesting. That could have been something cool. The final boss fight seems to kind of understand that could have been the case and isn't just a mini game. But like that's just the final boss fight, and it even doesn't incorporate any mechanics that have been built up throughout the game. It's its own individual thing. So like I wasn't too impressed with the boss fights. They weren't anything special. It's hard for me to say anything of this game is really great. The story even. I mean, like, this is some bare bones frickin' story. I didn't even like the story. I mean, like, it wasn't even, like, I started just fast forwarding through it, just mashing, X every single time somebody was talking. I was hoping to glean something from it, but I didn't find it particularly interesting or charming. They tried to shoehorn in some character development and some story progression throughout the game. I never cared about any of it. The characters weren't interesting. There wasn't enough time to really. It felt forced because the game was so short. Like any kind of progression just felt forced. So I never really enjoyed it. But yeah, the presentation is all that carries this game. It's 100% it. And it's handled very well. I mean, I can't. It's truly a joy to look at. It is just a bore after a few hours. And that's why it's hard for me to give it any kind of glowing review. Nothing particularly bad. It's just basic and straightforward. Lacks any kind of real interesting progression or even like implementation of the idea that I thought looked really cool in these trailers. So if you're looking for a game that looks really pretty, I mean, like, you found it. But like, it's an 83 on Metacritic. I don't think that's horrible for what it is. 83 is, I think, maybe a little high. I think like 81, something or like a 79 to an 81, I probably would have understood. So, 83 isn't very far off from that. But, I think that it definitely got a couple of points from presentation. But, it is what it is. Some people, that's what they look for in games, so it is what it is. But yeah, very underwhelmed by the Plucky Squire. I was really having high expectations for that going in, so very unfortunate there. And the last game I have to talk about is not a full game. Well, it is, but I didn't play the full game. I played the demo. That's right, I played the demo for Metaphor Refantazio, the next big game from the Persona team. So we obviously talked here on the podcast a while back about Persona 3 Reloaded. Alexis and I played that earlier this year, and we both really enjoyed it. I think I got my fill from it, and that I think is going to kind of seep into this conversation a little bit. But it is a very, very well-reviewed game right now. It is one of the best reviewed games of the year so far. Above a 90. Right now, reviews are still trickling in, but we're hitting like 92, 93 territory, which is insanely good. Insanely good. I was not expecting 90 plus. I think some people were. I was expecting high 80s. Because anything the Persona team that touches at this point is just going to be considered very good. Yoko Taro, another Yoko Taro reference in this podcast, funny enough, came out and said, like, this is like one of the prettiest, JRPGs I've ever played. Like the first truly next-gen looking JRPG I've ever played, something along those lines. And yeah, it looks really nice. I mean, and that's something obviously the Persona team does really, really well. It's its art style, but like clearly, as we've demonstrated with the Plucky Squire, an art style is not something that necessarily is going to save a game for me. So, what do I think about Metaphor Refantazio demo? Well, let's start with the beginning here. So, Metaphor Refantazio, specifically the demo, really love this thing that Sega has been doing with their demos. I think Sega published this game. Pretty sure they own the Persona team, so I think they did. But this is something that a lot of Japanese studios, specifically Sega is the one I associate it with, are the ones that are putting out these super long demos. Super long demos. Not only are they super long, but and when I say super long, I mean like this demo took me about 4 to 5 hours to get through, which is like almost as long as it took me to completely beat the Plucky Squire. So like, or completely beat Doki Doki Literature Club, even longer than Doki Doki Literature Club. But like this is a very long demo that the file actually carries over. It is actually like playing the full game. So it starts at the very beginning of the game, and it just gives you full reign. You get to do whatever the frick you want, just like you were playing the actual game, until a certain point of the game, and then it's just like, nope, this is where we cut you off. But if you want, you can just pay, unlock the game, and then you can keep going as if nothing ever happened because you've just been playing the full game the whole time. I love that. That is so freeing as a consumer. Like, it really does give you a great taste of the game playing it for that long. And for a JRPG, by the way, this game is already confirmed like over 100 hours long, which is so intimidating for me. I hate that. But like, this is like 4 to 5 hours of most games would be like a really significant chunk, and you'd be giving away too much of your product for free. But like for a game like this, it's like 100 hours. That's the tutorial, bro. And it literally is. It's frickin' the tutorial. In all honesty, like, you could finish this demo and still have plenty to learn in terms of the basics for Metaphor Refantazio. But like, I think it's incredibly consumer friendly, and I think it like, this really did give me a great interpretation of what I think the final overall product is. I think you go into a lot of demos and you're like, well, that was a nice taste, but I really don't know if I'll like the full game. And like with these demos, it's like, like, if you have beaten the demo and you're still on the fence, like, that's like, what is up. Like, that is the game. But anyway, so I've hardly scratched the surface of the full game, but the game's story, let's be frank, JRPGs, you got two things that are going to carry you for 100 plus hours, and it's not the combat, it's characters and story. So is the characters and story good? Well, let's start with what the story is. So the story is you're in a fantasy world. That's like their big thing they're pushing for this. Is like, this is truly fantasy. It's truly fantasy. And, like, it very is much fantasy. Like, there's even like a dragon, a very notable dragon in appearance in the game. It does try to push like this is a fantasy kind of thing, very medieval-esque talking points and talking mannerisms and such as and so on. But you are like the best friend of the prince. And the game opens with this really bad dude, just all-around bad guy, stabbing him in the chest in his bed. So he's freaking evil. So the king has died, and it puts this big power struggle into perspective. Like, in this evil dude is going to try to take over the kingdom because he's freaking evil, and you are the king's son, or the king's son's best friend. And it just so happens that this really bad dude, also cursed the prince so that he will apparently die, is kind of what I gathered from the game, is like he's been cursed with death, but he's like basically is in a coma at the time. And like, you're trying to break this curse. So like, the prince can not only live, but also hopefully be the rightful ruler of the country. So you start the game basically trying to find out who cursed this guy, how and how to get him. You find out pretty quickly, oh, it's this really bad dude. It's this really bad dude who just murdered the king. And like, so you go off, you do some undercover stuff, find an informant who tells you, yeah, it was a really bad dude who killed the dad, the king man, and then cursed your friend. And we have to kill him in order to save your best friend, bro. And it's like, okay, cool. Honestly, this whole story bored the frick out of me until like they really drop the mic on the story towards the end of the demo. It really, I mean, like, and this is like one of the problems of these games is like they are so drawn out. They don't need to be 100 hours, but they make them 100 hours. And so I felt like this really just needed to be your tutorial. Like, we really could have consolidated this, and no, like, you're going to be learning about all this stuff that really won't matter at all in like 4 hours. Like, it's because the game takes a drastic turn. So essentially, you get to him. You're like, okay, we're gonna frickin' crash the king's funeral, and we're gonna frickin' murder this dude in front of the entire kingdom and be like, yo, he's a bad dude. And so you eventually get to that funeral, and the dude comes out, and the bad dude crashes the funeral. He's like, actually, freaking monsters are invading your kingdom, and maybe you should have a ruler like me who's kind of a bad dude. And the people are like, you maybe have a point. He maybe is the man for the job. And you try to kill him, and a spell that the king put on the kingdom before his death appears. And he says, look, I'm an unbiased spell king thing, and I just want my kingdom, because I'm a cool king, I just want my kingdom to be ruled by somebody that, like, people want to be king. So, like, whoever has the most people that want them to be king, you're just going to be king. I'll make you king. Like, I'll cast my magic king spell, and I'll make you king. And so the dude's like, hey, maybe you guys should frickin' do me. And then, like, there's basically the right-hand man to the king is like, hey, no, dude, I'm kind of like vice president king, and I should be king. And then you're like, well, I just kind of want the prince to be king, so I guess I'm going to go and I'm going to unite the kingdom, because I haven't gotten into this yet, and I will in a second, but, like, basically the world is divided into 8 separate tribes. And you're like, well, I'm just going to go get, like, help from all of these dudes to, like, fight this evil guy and, like, hopefully get the prince to become king in the process. So, like, that's where the story really takes off. And that's where I was like, yo, actually, this is kind of cool. Like, I actually like this story, and I kind of see how it would be like a 100-hour-long epic, like, journey or tale. And, like, I mean, I didn't care about the first 4 hours of the game, though. So, like, that's not a good sign. But, like, I really enjoyed it past the, like, mic drop twist moment of, like, well, here's the actual story we've been building to for the past 4 to 5 hours. Like, okay, cool. Glad it took you that long. But again, like, that's what you get with these games, is they're incredibly freaking long. So, I was sold. After that, I loved the story. I was like, cool. Not super big fan of how long it took to get to that point, but I like that we got here. Into everything else. People have been saying this game is like Persona. And boy, they ain't lying. Everything. And I mean almost completely everything is pretty much ripped from Persona. The combat, incredibly similar. Time limitations, like how the game progresses, and, like, you can miss things change from day to day. That's obviously Persona. The anime JRPG vibe, the UI and the swagger within that UI, the presentation, very Persona team. Straight up plot points, like there is a Velvet Room equivalent that is incorporated in this game very early on, which to my personal preference is the Velvet Room is way cooler. Like, this Velvet Room is like freaking boring. It's like literally you go inside of a book. Like, what am I, a freaking nerd? I ain't gonna read. Like, I'm playing a video game, guy. Like, come on. Like, there's relationship building. Your bonds in Persona, like that kind of thing is also in this game. I mean, this is Persona. This is heavy Persona. There is one big change that I will say I was like, okay, this has potential to change some things up. I'm still a little on the fence on what I feel about it. I think it's overall a positive change for sure, and that's the combat. And I think specifically the Persona system. So obviously going to keep referring to it as like Persona, unfortunately, but Persona has always been a little confusing. Let's be real, okay? I know we love to talk great about Persona around here, but it's always been a little bit confusing in terms of, like how to really level up, or how to like upgrade Persona. So in Persona, you basically you get things in a dungeon, or you get monsters in a dungeon, kind of like Pokemon. A lot of people use a lot to kind of compare it to Pokemon. You get monsters in a dungeon, and you go to the Velvet Room, and you combine these guys to make bigger and better Pokemon, essentially, or Persona. And they get the moves that were, you can kind of bring moves from previous, or the ones that you combined into the newer Pokemon to then use in the dungeon. That's all well and good, but let's be real. When I combine like a penis monster and a snowman, and it makes a samurai, I'm like, what the frick is going on? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, let's just be frank here. So, like, in this game, it's a job class system. So every person that you meet, every relationship that you forge, you get a new class that then you can attribute to literally any character in your party whenever you want, as long as you can pay for the unlock cost for that character. So essentially, like in the demo, I unlocked, well, here's your knight class, so like kind of your standard all-around class. Here's your mage, here's your tank, and here's your healer. Like, those are the 4 classes that I unlocked. And the deeper I evolve my relationship with those characters that are associated with that particular class, I get more elevated roles for that class. So essentially, like, what I understand is my medic would be, or my mage would be upgraded to like an archmage or something like that, which is cool. What it looked like from the menu that I could tell is there's about 15 classes, which is a lot. And so it really simplifies the combat in terms of, now you don't have to manage all these freaking personas and, like, combine them and not know how the frick you're getting from point A to point B. You just freaking combine stuff because the game tells you to. And you have a more streamlined, like, easily understandable and cohesive combat system that can lead to more strategy. Because another thing about that is, like I said, you can change any party member's class around whenever the heck you want, which is great. What you can't do in Persona is that. So, like, if a person is, well, I'm just the fire guy, like, I just have a bunch of fire moves, like, that character will always be the fire guy. So if you are ever going up against an ice boss or something like that, like, you pretty much have to not use that character. Just put them out of your misery and leave them in the frickin' like dungeon entrance, because there is no point in ever using that character. Like, or for that particular fight. So that's how you would have to kind of incorporate that. Here, it looks like it doesn't really matter. You can just straight up, well, I guess the limitation is the amount of money you have to unlock things, but you can just bring this guy who you want to be a medic in your party and have him there, and just kind of keep that the way it is, depending on how you want to change up your strategy or not. And I honestly think that sounds pretty cool. Will it be cool for 100+ hours? This is my only question. I think overall I really like that change. I think for 100+ hours, that's where I start kind of raising an eyebrow. And I'm like, well, can I find a groove with 2 or 3 classes and be like, okay, well, I just will stick with these. I'm pretty comfortable here. And then I'll just be like, I'll be done. And I'll just be mashing the X button over and over and over again until the end of the game. I don't know. I'd have to play 100+ hours of the game to find out. I don't have a lot of faith in the Persona team to make a combat system that would last 100 hours and be interesting, because I don't think the Persona team's previous games' combat systems did that. I think they were very, very, very traditional and kind of boring, and I just kind of wanted out of them by the end of the games I was in. But, like, maybe this will change my mind. I don't know. Another thing that was kind of teased in the combat in the games, I remember this was kind of a big deal, at least to me, was they were like, yeah, we're going to have like a mix of like real like turn-based combat and like real-time combat. And I was just like, I gotta see how they do this. And like we kind of saw some gameplay a while back, and I was like, I kind of think I know how they're doing this, and they shouldn't have kind of billed it as that. They should not have advertised it as like this is a combo. Like they shouldn't have done that. It is basically the quote-unquote real world or real-time aspect of the combat is like if you are over-leveled, then you can instantly kill an enemy without going into turn-based combat. So essentially they try to mow down the grinding for you. This is a feature that is also, I believe it's also available in freaking Persona games. It is also there if you are too over-leveled. But this is like if you're one level above these enemies, it'll be like, nope, you can just instantly kill them, which I think is like honestly pretty nice. It means most of this is probably going to be tuned pretty well so that you're not wasting a lot of time. And I love that. I really appreciate that. So like I think that that's great. I don't think that it's real-time combat. I think that's ridiculous. Something that I really noticed in the demo that scared me a little bit, and it for reasons I'll get into, is this game really wants you to know that the world is racist. Holy frick, it is. This is a racist freaking world. Wow, everybody hates you because you're like a different race. And like that's like literally what the frick they say. And you know, like I don't have any problem with like racism being like a plot point in freaking video games. Valkyria Chronicles, I freaking talk about too much, is like one of my most favorite games ever, and racism is a straight up like main plot point in that game, but I think it's handled really, really well, and I really, really enjoy how they handle it. And this seems so ham-fisted and in your face and like desperate to communicate what racism is that I'm like, bro, I don't think this story is going to be very good. Like I think the main theme of this story is going to be racism, and they don't know how to talk about it at all. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is not a good sign, because like, let's be real, I don't care about the vast majority of Persona game stories. It's funny because a lot of people say like, oh, well, Persona 3's story is actually really good. Bro, I just played Persona 3. I played 80 hours of Persona 3, and I will stand here and tell you, its story is not that great. It is not even in the top 10 JRPGs I've ever played. Like, it is pretty bog standard for the vast majority of that game. Like, nothing even happens in that game until like halfway through it, and then like even then, like, it's not that great. Like, it's very anime. It's very kind of rushed towards the ending, considering they had 80 hours to try to figure it out, how to tell a story. And like 5, I genuinely hardly remember that game's story at all. Like, I really have to sit down and be like, let's put on my thinking cap here to vaguely remember what the story of Persona 5 was. So like Persona 4 admittedly is my favorite JRPG ever, but I still wouldn't even sit here and be like, its story is really great. Like, I like the mystery behind the game. I don't necessarily think the game's story/narrative is like the best thing ever. Like, there's definitely better stories out there. So like, this is not a studio that I'm sitting here and already having high expectations for a story. And like I said when I started this conversation, you need good story and characters in order to like get anybody to sit through 100 hours of your game. So like, that's like, right now I really loved the like, oh, we're gonna go on a quest to like get the, you know, we're gonna turn this monarchy into a democracy, you know, like it's whoever gets the most king votes, you know, like that sounds cool. Right now everything else I've seen from this game is like, okay, well, I don't really expect them to kind of come full circle with that story and make it worth 100+ hours. I haven't been sold by any characters yet. None of these characters that I haven't met most of the cast yet, but like the cast that I have met has been pretty bland, kind of okay. Like, I've met my Yusuke, and he's cool. He's like my bro, and I'm all about him. He's cool, but like, I don't know if I love him, you know, like he he's all right, you know? So I can't say that I'm like super impressed with it as a whole. It's too much like Persona. And here's the thing is, I was really hoping like, okay, this is Persona team's chance. You know, like, they've been making Persona games. They're considered one of the best JRPG makers in the game. And by that, I mean the industry. And, you know, like this could be their chance to finally say, okay, well, we've been making these Persona games for a while. We finally figured out what people like, but we've been kind of shackled to this old school kind of deal, you know, or this old school Persona development style and how we do things. Let's take this time, this opportunity to make a JRPG. So we're not making a Catherine, we're making a JRPG, and we're going to make it different. We're going to do something totally off the wall and really try to innovate and try to work on these ideas that we've been sitting on for so long. I thought that's where we were going with this. And this is another Persona game. Like, this is another Persona game. And while, like, I am cool with Persona, bro, I just played an 80-plus hour JRPG that was literally Persona this year. Like, it wasn't even 6 months ago. It wasn't even freaking 6 months ago that I played that game. And you want me to play another 100-hour JRPG that's pretty similar to what I just played? Like, I don't know, man. I'm kind of burnt out on it. And that's why I'm really surprised to see 90 plus for the reviews on this. Like, I was really expecting high 80s, but I was not expecting, because just the Persona team, you literally just have to make something, and I think they get high 80s. But I was really expecting a little bit more pushback of, like, this is too similar to Persona. Like, this is, you know, I've just played a Persona game, and this is exactly like it. I think we probably we don't need as much of this, or I'm just kind of burnt out on it. I expected the reviews to reflect that, and it didn't. So what I'm thinking at this point is I am either not the target audience, which I don't think is accurate, or like there is something else here that I just haven't unlocked yet. And I'm really hoping it's the second, but thank God for this demo, because I feel like I got my fill. You know, like I played 5 hours of this game, and I am like, yeah, I really don't need to buy this day one. Like, I'm really cool sitting on this and waiting for it to drop in price and maybe seeing what people say and seeing how the discourse around it goes. And, you know, I think that's amazing, but I think it's also probably not great, because I wouldn't be surprised if I'm not the only one who did that. And if that hurts sales, then people wouldn't be likely to do these kind of demos anymore. But don't tell them that. Please continue to give me consumer freedom and all of the options that I can possibly have. That would be great. But Metaphor Refantazio right now is sitting at like a solid 8 for me. So I'm way under what the critics are feeling for it. You know, like I think it'll be a good game. I don't think it doesn't feel great to me because it just feels too samey from what I'm used to from Persona. But again, I could be way off. I have not played the full game, and I have apparently like 100 plus hours left in the frickin' thing. So, you know, you never know. But that's all I've been playing. That's too much. I've been playing too much, maybe. Maybe I need to go outside, but I can't because of COVID. But anyways, that was another episode. The 20th episode. That's a big number, 20. 20 episodes. And you've been here for them all. Maybe. I don't know. But I appreciate you listening to this one for sure. Really awesome that you stuck around. And I appreciate it. Let me know what you thought. Why not? I've already done a call out, but I'll do another one. I'm not, you know, too prideful. I'll do it. You know, leave a comment. Send me an email at plugandplay1 or plugandplaypodcast1@gmail.com. I need to get better at that. And, man, I feel like I got to have a better send-off, to be quite honest. But right now, it's just thank you for listening. I appreciate you. Play some more video games, and maybe hug the ones you love extra tight today. You never know. And thanks for listening. Bye, guys.